Spring, Chapter 2. The high stone wall at the back of the orphanage held a great fascination for Mandy. It was behind the orchard and stretched for miles to either side of it. None of the other children seemed to know or care what lay beyond, but Mandy was immensely curious. She speculated for hours, wondering what lay on the other side. By standing on tiptoe, she could glimpse many trees growing thick and strong. "There's got to be something splendid over there," she told herself. "I just know there's a castle hidden among the trees, and I'll bet a handsome prince lives in it. He's probably very lonely." Sometimes she imagined a forest full of animals that could actually speak to her. Her favorite dream was of a white unicorn that would follow her everywhere, who would lie beside her and put his head on her lap. "I would call him Snow," she thought. Her desire to see over the wall became an obsession. She felt that just a glimpse of the other side might reveal what she always seemed to be searching for. She tentatively broached the subject to her friend Ellie, a maid at the orphanage. "Ellie, you know the big wall?" "Mm-hmm." "What's on the other side?" "Oh, heavens, I don't rightly know. Just more country, I suppose." "Has anyone from here ever seen it?" "Not that I know." One afternoon after school, Mandy went to the wall and studied it carefully. At one end, a large apple tree growing on the other side thrust long pink and white blossomed branches over into the orchard. Intrigued, Mandy went closer, and upon further examination, she found that a number of the big yellow stones in the wall protruded just far enough for her to gain a precarious foothold. "I might just make it to the top," she thought. "With luck, I could reach that big branch of the apple tree, and once on it, I could really see for miles and miles." The prospect of such a view was a challenge to Mandy's adventurous nature, and on an impulse, she decided to try it that very second. She took a deep breath and began to climb. She hoped no one would see her. Carefully testing every stone before she put her weight on it, Mandy pulled herself up inch by inch. At one point, her fingers fumbled, and she clung for a moment, breathing hard. Then, with a last careful effort, she pulled herself to the top of the wall and threw her arms around the branch of the apple tree. Now, looking down, she found the effect quite frightening. The ground seemed a long way away. Here's an illustration. "Wow, I didn't realize this was so high," she thought. The orchard was awash with soft, frothy blossoms. She turned and peered excitedly through the apple branches. An incredible vista was spread out before her, and Mandy drew in her breath with excitement. She was looking at a whole new world, hundreds of trees stretching as far as the eye could see, most of them with that soft silvery green trunk and fine textured bark that make the beech trees so easily recognizable. Sunlight filtered through the leaves in bright patches. The woods were open and clear, not dense at all. It looked wonderfully inviting and explorable. Mandy saw a small footpath leading through the trees and longed to see where it led. "I've come this far. Now if I could just get down the other side," she thought. She saw that the apple tree forked near its base, and it continued to subdivide, giving her numerous climbable branches. The bark felt smooth and soft beneath her hands as she eased herself to the ground. Now to look for my unicorn. She set off along the path, which led into the heart of the woods. She was acutely aware of the blue sky, the heat from the sun, and the wonderful warm smell of earth and moss and flowers. "Surely I'll find the prince's castle in a little while," she thought. But each new dip and bend in the path revealed only more trees. She was just beginning to feel a keen sense of disappointment when the path suddenly widened, and almost immediately she found herself in an open and sunny clearing. It was quite wide, almost a grassy meadow, and dotted with evergreens. Mandy could hear the sound of running water, but her immediate attention was attracted to the far end of the clearing, where stood a very old and very small cottage. Most of its windows were broken, and there was no door. Tiles had slipped off the roof, and the little chimney had a ridiculous tilt to it. And it was in very bad state of repair. Gosh, I wonder if someone lives here, thought Mandy. Should I go and see? Ooh, perhaps I'd better not. But her curiosity was stimulated. It certainly looks empty, but there might be someone in there, an old tramp or a witch or an animal. Matron Bridie was always reminding the children never to talk to strangers and to watch out for the unexpected. So Mandy quietly crept closer, keeping well out of sight behind the trees so that she wouldn't be detected. She could tell that someone once must have cultivated a garden. There was a low fence, broken in several places, with a little gate. Underneath the weeds, she could see the remains of a paved pathway leading to the space where the front door had been. Mandy kept perfectly still, straining her ears for the slightest noise. The gurgling sound of running water was nearer now, and birds sang in the trees. It was a perfectly lovely afternoon. She moved closer and lifted the gate, which was hanging by a single hinge. Here's another picture. She tiptoed up the path, being careful to avoid a large patch of stinging nettles, and tentatively peeked through the doorway. She was looking into a small room, and it was empty. Mandy gave a big sigh of relief. A staircase seemingly led to another room upstairs. In the back wall were two small doors. The house had no furniture. An old garden rake lay across the floor. Mandy moved to the stairs, treading carefully on the loose boards. Each step that she took caused little puffs of dust to rise and swirl in the shafts of sunshine that came through the windows. She climbed up into a tiny bedroom. There was no one about, and no furniture here either. The windows were intact, but extremely dirty. Mandy wiped at the glass with her hand and had a splendid view of the meadow and the woods through which she had just traveled. A little brook was visible too. It splashed and danced along the base of a hillock and was enchantingly pretty. Downstairs again, and gaining courage with every step, she pushed gently at the first of the two small doors. It swung open, creaking on old hinges. She was in a tiny kitchen. There was a sink in one corner, with a single iron water tap attached to the wall above it. When she turned the tap, drops of rusty liquid dripped out, and a spider scuttled from the drain. There was a cupboard which contained nothing but a few broken bottles and an old tin basin, and there was a back door. Mandy pulled it open. She saw the remains of an old bonfire in the tall grass and a path leading around to the front of the house. Re-entering through the doorway, she went back to the main room and tried the second small door. This one opened easily at her touch, and as it swung wide, Mandy was totally unprepared for what she saw. To her amazement, she found herself staring at a room which was entirely decorated with seashells. It was absolutely incredible. Lovely shells of every shape and size, and all colors of white and pink and iridescent mother of pearl, lined every wall and the ceiling too. The effect was one of the most beautiful sights Mandy had ever seen. The afternoon light shone softly through a big bay window at the end of the room. Cobwebs hung in silken strands. A pair of old curtains made of some soft material moved gently in the breeze, coming through the open door. The woodwork in the window and door trimmings were painted gold, and the flooring was of tile or marble. A large fireplace was set into the left wall, and the mantelpiece seemed to be of marble too. How this extraordinary room came to be in this small cottage so many miles from anywhere, Mandy couldn't begin to imagine, and it was a full minute before she recovered from the surprise of finding it there at all. She moved around, touching the shelves and the curtains and looking into the fireplace. Everything was coated with dust. She wandered outside to the clearing and sat down on the grass, drawing her knees up under her chin. She stared at the little house and garden for a very long time. Who could have lived here, she wondered. It can't have been a family, for there's just the one bedroom, and the whole house is hardly big enough. Maybe somebody lived here alone. But what kind of person would do that? And did he make the shell room? The discovery of this wonderful place was almost more exciting than finding a castle. The cottage was so charming and quaint. There was a quality about it, an entrancing air. An idea began to take shape in her mind, and the more she thought about it, the more it appealed to her. What if, said Mandy to herself, what if I pretended this cottage were mine? I could sort of adopt it. Who would know? Who would care? Nobody lives here, I'm sure of that now. And somebody needs to take care of it. And, oh, I could take care of it. She sprang to her feet. I could. This place could really be mine. A house of my very own. She ran back into the little garden. I could pull all the weeds out of here and plant flowers and mend the fence and make the path tidy. I could sweep and dust inside and clean the shell room and wash the curtains in the windows. Oh, little house, she turned to it. I could take such good care of you. Mandy went all through the cottage once more, seeing the rooms in a new perspective. 1,000 thoughts ran through her head. She would have to make a list of all the things she would need. How was she to get them? And from where? She would have to be careful not to let anyone know of this secret place. It would be difficult to come here every day without being seen. She had no idea how late it was getting until suddenly she realized the sky was darkening with the oncoming night. Heavens, I must get back. Matron will be worried about me. Running across the meadow, Mandy paused briefly for a final look at her newfound delight. The little house was soft white in the gray dusk. I'll be back tomorrow, Mandy whispered to it, and turning, she sped through the woods along the path she had found earlier that afternoon. She reached the high stone wall and swiftly climbed the old apple tree. Once onto the branch that extended over into the orchard, she eased herself down until she was hanging by her hands and then lightly dropped to the ground. In a matter of moments, she was inside the orphanage and racing up the stairs to her room to wash her face and hands before dinner.